Good morning, everyone. I'm not Ann Ravel. I'm Bill James, and I'm chair of the Santa Clara County Democratic Party. I'm one of the organizers of our event today. We're having some technical difficulties in getting Chairperson Ravel on the Zoom, and so we wanted to make sure that we're respectful of your time and try to start as close to on time as possible. And we're really delighted today. We're going to leave you without spotlights for a moment, but in addition to Ann Ravel, who we hope will be able to join as I work with her offline in a moment to overcome her technical difficulties, we have Martin McTaggart from the City of San Mateo Clerk's Office, and he's going to present some information about, from his perspective and experience about being a candidate and applying to be a candidate to run for example, City Council. We also have Jordan Eldridge from Eldridge Partners, and he's going to present on from the perspective of being a treasurer on a campaign or for a political organization. And so, without further ado, I'm gonna allow Martin to introduce himself and to make and begin his presentation. And just so everybody can see him well, I'm going to spotlight him. There's Martin. And Martin, if you would just do us all the favor of introducing yourself and beginning your direct presentation, and we're happy to have you with us.
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. My name is Martin McTaggart. I am the city clerk for the city of San Mateo. Pleasure to be with you all today. Elections, I'll give you a little bit of background about me. Prior to working with the city of San Mateo City's clerk's office, in a past life, I worked with the County of San Mateo's Registration and Elections Division. I worked there for about 5 years. I was heavily involved in the implementation of the California Voters' Choice Act, which is, as I'm sure many of you are familiar with, the change from polling place elections to the new vote center model. I haven't worked in the county elections office for 2 years now, so there may be some changes that the county would have to direct you on from when I previously worked there, but delighted to be with you all today. I have a little presentation which I'm excited to share with you. And this just gives you kind of a quick run through on how to run for city council. And let's see, bear with me one moment. Okay. So in San Mateo, we have recently moved to district-based elections. The city of San Mateo moved to district elections officially in 2022. During the November 2022 election, we transitioned Districts 1, District 3, and District 5 were the first to go to district elections. We also had a citywide ballot measure, which was Measure CC. This November, we will be completing our transition to district-based elections with the election of District 2 and District 4, which are currently at-large seats, and we may have a citywide ballot measure. So a lot of the information that I'm going to be giving you here today relates specific to the city of San Mateo. So if you're seeking office in another city or another jurisdiction, definitely recommend reaching out to the city clerk, or if it's a special district, reaching out to the clerk for that special district. Again, for the city of San Mateo, I wanted to just talk about city council terms. This is one of the first questions that we often get from prospective candidates. They're interested in serving as a city council member, and they want to know how long is the term for city council. So in city of San Mateo, it's a 4-year term. Incumbents may serve up to 3 terms as city council member. No partial term of office shall be counted as any portion of consecutive term. And the term expirations for city council are staggered. That way that only half of the offices expire at one time, or approximately half. Another question that we get is, how do I qualify as a candidate, or what makes me eligible to be a candidate? And the requirements are pretty simple. You need to be at least 18 years of age. You need to be a United States citizen. You also need to be a registered voter and a resident of the district that you're seeking office for. And I know Jordan is going to go into a little bit more detail specifically on campaign finance compliance. So I'm not going to go into too much detail here, just to kind of gloss over a little bit in terms of the forms that you'll be getting familiar with if you're running for office. So one of the first forms you'll see is the Form 501, which is essentially your candidate intention form. And this must be filed with the city clerk before you solicit, raise, or spend any money in connection with a campaign. Another form that you'll be seeing is the Form 700, which is the Statement of Economic Interests, and that is required during the time that you are submitting your filing documentation in the nomination period. A couple of other forms that you'll be getting familiar with in relation to campaign finance is Form 470, Form 460, and Form 410. And all three of these really are to do with the dollar amount that you plan to spend or raise. So if you plan to spend or raise less than $2,000, you'll be filing a Form 470. If you plan to spend or raise more than $2,000, and apologies for the typo on that screen, it'll be a Form 460. And lastly, the Form 410 is required for any campaign committee expecting to spend or raise $2,000 or more. And you might be thinking to yourself, where can I get these forms? So the Fair Political Practices Commission is a great resource for you. They have a lot of information on their website. fppc.ca.gov is where you're going to find those. They have a dedicated section for forms. They also have a candidate toolkit, and we definitely recommend for first-time candidates that you take a look at that toolkit. It outlines the responsibilities of candidates and treasurers during, before, during, and after the election cycle. So the FPPC advice line is a really helpful resource too. Many of the questions that you have relating to your own personal financial circumstances, the FPPC is available to ask. The city clerk's office does not field these questions, so we may redirect you if you're asking specific questions about what information to disclose. We don't get involved in that, but the FPPC is available. I added on the screen here, they have their advice line. So there's some further information there and also their email address. They're usually very responsive. In the city of San Mateo, I know this differs from city to city, but we are digital filing. Our filing, we use NetFile. NetFile is another partner that you can reach out to on their website. They have training opportunities for filers. So if you go to the NetFile website, you can sign up for training and they can give you a little bit of orientation. Also wanted to talk a little bit about local campaign contributions and voluntary expenditure limits. So these are very San Mateo specific, but it's important that you be aware that depending on the jurisdiction that you may be running for, there may be different rules and regulations that relates to campaign contributions and voluntary expenditure limits. So I'll touch on campaign contribution limits first. In the city of San Mateo, we have local campaign contribution limits ordinance, which limits the contribution amounts for individuals to $500. We also have a limit for organization of $1,000. And also a candidate cannot personally make a loan to their campaign in an amount which exceeds $15,000. And we do have more information on our website if you're interested in our campaign contribution ordinance. Recently, our city council adopted an ordinance instituting voluntary expenditure limits. So for the November 5th election in 2024, we will be introducing a new process, which is voluntary campaign expenditure ceiling, which is for the city of San Mateo, $2.50 per resident in the electoral district, which is then rounded to the nearest 1,000. And I'll show you in just a moment what that equals out to for this particular election. It is optional, as the name suggests. It is a voluntary expenditure limit. Basically, the way that this will work is if a candidate would like to participate, they'll be given this form during the nomination period, and they'll have an opportunity to fill that out and return it to the clerk's office. If they agree to abide by the voluntary expenditure limits, they have a couple of incentives. So this information will be clearly published on our website, which candidates agree to participate in the voluntary expenditure limit. It'll also be published in our digital newsletter, as well as the city's newspaper of general circulation, which is the San Mateo Daily Journal. Another quick note about campaign finance. In the city of San Mateo, we're the only city in the county that has this resource available to the public. We just like to let candidates know that this is something that exists. We have a campaign finance dashboard, which includes a lot of information here in relation to campaign activity. And this is all available. That's all publicly available information when you complete your filing requirements. The intent here is to give this information and make it more accessible to the public. But as you can see here, this was launched for our November 2022 election, and we will have a similar resource for the November 2024 election. Going back to voluntary expenditure limits, so here we have the districts up for election in November 2024. As you can see, the district population is based on the 2020 US Census, and the dollar amount is shown on the bottom there. So it's 54,000 for District 2 and 59,700 for District 4. Quick note about the nomination period. So the nomination period always opens 113 days before Election Day. So that's Monday, July 15th, 2024 for this election. And it will close on the 88th day before Election Day. And election terminology, we like to use E-. So every deadline is indicated by the number of days before Election Day. So the nomination period will close on Friday, October 9th. In terms of next steps for candidates, and this applies to all jurisdictions, in terms of how to pull your papers during the nomination period, it's important that you schedule an appointment with the city clerk. So once that nomination period opens, you can reach out to the clerk's office and they will schedule an appointment for you. Nomination papers, this is more of kind of like a recommendation or a pro tip, if you will, for getting your signatures. So the California Elections Code requires that it's for nomination periods, it'd be 20 signatures and no more than 30 signatures. What we recommend is that you aim closer to the 30 signatures. The reason for that is the signatures on the nomination form are verified by the county elections office. So and it has happened before where someone thought they were registered an address or moved out of county or moved out of a city, didn't update their registration. So you just want to make sure that you have a buffer in there, and it's good to start early to make sure that you're not waiting until Friday, August 9th in the afternoon to finalize your signatures. I definitely recommend you have those prepared in advance. Just a couple of other things, again, very San Mateo specific, so please check with your city clerk's office or your special district office if you are filing for another jurisdiction. But in the city of San Mateo, there is no filing fee for candidates. I also wanted to add to that no candidate may withdraw their declaration candidacy after the close of the nomination period. Candidate statements, so this is another question that we get. Submitting a candidate statement for the publication in the county's sample ballot and voter information pamphlet is optional. However, there is a form that you'll be required to fill out to indicate whether you're choosing to do so. Candidate statements cannot contain more than 200 words. The county elections office will be hosting a seminar for candidates on filing for office, and part of that seminar will include how to use those 200 words. Each word is counted very meticulously, and there is a procedure and a protocol that the county follows to make sure that each candidate is following that. So you will get more information from the county elections office on how to make sure you're making the most of the 200 words that you have. And they'll also go into some detail about the formatting. When I worked at the county elections office, they didn't allow bullet points or any special formatting that might highlight specific things within the candidate statement. So the county elections office will be able to confirm with you if that's the same practice. Another change in November of 2024, the city council directed us to remove the cost for submitting a candidate statement. In past years, or until this year, we've had candidates pay for essentially a pro rata amount. The county provides us with an estimate for what the candidate statement will be. And then usually what'll happen is the candidate will pay a deposit. And if the county, after the election, once they calculate their costs, they'll give us the total actual costs for printing and mailing the candidate statements within the sample ballot and voter information pamphlet. So that is new for the city of San Mateo. The city is going to be absorbing those costs, so candidates do not need to pay a fee. I just wanted to also add, in terms of additional languages, the county will be translating your candidate statement into other languages as required by the Federal Voting Rights Act. Campaign signs are also a really important thing just to be aware of. So California state law regulates temporary political signs and reminds candidates that signs may not be placed earlier than 90 days before an election and must be removed 10 days after an election when placed in public. The city of San Mateo, again, very San Mateo specific, so please check with your respective agency. San Mateo has a sign ordinance. It's listed on here. It's Municipal Code Chapter 2504, but it regulates the placement and size of campaign signs. One thing that we also recommend is candidates are reminded to remind their enthusiastic campaign workers that it's unlawful to remove or deface another candidate's sign. We've seen all sorts of interesting things happen during an election cycle in the past, so we just want to avoid candidates having to deal with that in the future. So yeah, another thing that you must have the property owner's permission to place the sign on their property, and just be aware of any rules or regulations in relation to the public right of way. And if you have any questions about placement of sign, if you as a candidate or out in the field or your volunteers have identified a sign that you're questioning the placement of, like, does this have the property owner's approval? You can always reach out to the clerk's office. Definitely recommend checking with our office first before taking any action yourself. Just want to really reiterate that. A number of other frequently asked questions that we get during the election cycle. So ballot placement, a lot of people ask, how do I get placed first in the list of candidates on the ballot? So that's regulated by California elections law. The Secretary of State performs a randomized alphabet drawing, and that determines the order of the placement on the ballot. In terms of withdrawing the candidate statement or making changes to this, we have seen this in the past at the county elections office where there'll be a typo on a candidate statement. Just very important to be aware that candidates may withdraw but not change the candidate statement once it's submitted. So if you find an error after you submitted your candidate statement, the only option is to withdraw. So just be very careful before you submit your candidate statement that you've proofread it, you've had someone else proofread it. If you have typos on there, it definitely is problematic. Election results. So these are published on the county elections office website. They will be publishing this hopefully in the next month or so, what the release schedule will look like. So they have on their website kind of a list of what the initial election results include, everything from vote by mail ballots that they've processed up until a certain point before election day, and the ballots that were received on election day itself. So they will have more information on their website closer to election day in terms of what you can expect in terms of election results. In the city of San Mateo, and as for many other cities, assuming a scenario, let's just say you got elected, so what happens next? So, and again, apologies for the typo. I was making some changes to this PowerPoint just in the moments before this meeting, but council members are sworn in at the first meeting in December, following in November election. Political activity and city employees. So I just wanted to flag this as well. Electioneering and political activities. So that's just something to be very aware of. City staff members are precluded from participating in any electioneering activities for a candidate while unpaid city time or on city property, and in all instances must follow the applicable state law. So just something to be aware of. And electioneering, the county elections office will give you a lot more information on that in terms of what's prohibited. Activity within 100 feet from the entrance to a polling place or vote center and from a ballot drop box is the key information there. And then just again, just to reiterate some additional resources. So the candidate seminars will be performed by the County of San Mateo's elections office. They should have a schedule on their website. If not now, then hopefully very soon. The FPPC does provide workshops and webinars. Appreciate that it's a lot of information, and Jordan will give you a little bit more information today on that. Also, electronic filing, NetFile is a resource for you there. And as always, feel free to reach out to your friendly city clerk's office if you have any questions at any step of the process. Hopefully, we can answer those questions for you. And if not, we can redirect you where to go to get the answer. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much, Martin. I think I speak for everyone when I say, is it okay that we later share your slides with attendees? It was pretty dense and great, wonderful. So we'll make sure we make that possible. But thank you for that clear and very information-packed presentation. I'm going to bring in our day chair. We've overcome the technical difficulties, and I want to welcome Ann Ravel. Ann, we're just really fortunate to have you. Ann is a former chair and former commissioner of the Federal Election Commission. She's a former head of the California State Fair Political Practices Commission. And she's also a past county county attorney for Santa Clara County. I'm the Santa Clara County Democratic Party chair. Ann's also a good friend, a good person. She walked with us in the rose, white, and blue parade in San Jose to celebrate women's 100th anniversary of women's suffrage. We're just delighted to have her as a member of our community and our Democratic community. And we're fortunate to have her with us here today as our day chair. And she's overcome technical difficulties to be here. So, Ann, I'll let you welcome people a little after Martin's presentation, and then we can hand off to Jordan to do his presentation, and then maybe some Q&A from there.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Bill. I appreciate it. And I do apologize for my failure to do a very good job on technology, despite the fact that we're in the center of technology. But I want to thank you all for joining us in this discussion for new candidates. And as I'm approaching this quickly, and I won't take that much time, and I appreciate the real intensive work that was given by your previous speaker and how great the slides were and the information. But as I wanted to say to you all, as the former chair of the California Fair Political Practices Commission, I recommend that you think very carefully about the staff that you use, as well as the treasurers. And I know there will be a discussion about treasurers in a moment, but those are really important things to think about and be careful, because as I was discussing the other day, the FPPC has actually even gone after people who had treasurers who were young and inexperienced, and how problematic that is. And it can be problematic, because it's important for you to know that the use of campaign funds by candidates, elected officials as well, once they're elected, and others who control the expenditures of the campaign funds, is really strictly regulated by the FPPC. Any expenditures of campaign funds have to be reasonably related to political, legislative, or governmental purposes. And so, while a lot of the governing law relating to campaign finance and what has been discussed previously has to do with the transparency of disclosure of donors and the amount of the contributions, and whether or not it meets the law with respect to that. But as you probably are aware, and I'm not sure it was said, the true source of any contribution has to be disclosed. And all of those issues are really, really important in an electoral process. But if the amount of an expenditure of a campaign confers a substantial personal benefit on a candidate or any other individual who is authorized to approve campaign expenditures. That expenditure has to be directly related to a political, legislative, or governmental purpose. And unfortunately, there have been many situations where people utilize campaign funds for personal purposes. And so, if there is a substantial personal benefit of using campaign funds, it if it's a value of more than $200, it could really cause huge problems through the FPPC with regard to how the candidates are using expenditures. And the FPPC has fined committees for payments made from a campaign account that were used for personal purposes, including, and I'll give you some of the cases that have been dealt with by the FPPC, automobile care services, doctor visits, clothing, and personal life insurance premiums. And those have been the subject of many FPPC decisions that were imposed really very large fines on candidates. And I'm pretty sure that will be discussed next. But also you have to think about attorneys' fees and other costs that are related to something other than the campaign itself, or relating to, and if they're related to administrative, civil, or criminal litigation, it can only be paid for with campaign funds if the litigation is directly related to the activities of the committee. So that's sort of a warning for everybody that you need to think about expenditures as well as campaign contributions. And I will turn it over to the next speaker, who will talk to you very carefully about issues of campaign finance in the work of treasurers, which he's very familiar with all of those issues, and I think it's important for you to know it. And perhaps I will ask him if he can talk a little bit about some of the fines that the FPPC has imposed on those issues as well. So I'll turn it over. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne. Hello, everybody. My name is Jordan Eldridge. I am a treasurer in San Jose. I am the principal of Eldridge Political Partners. I have a couple of my team members here listening in, so that's great. But thank you so much for having me. I am going to share my screen. All right, so definitely, if you can, write down my email address and my phone number for your reference. I am available to take questions. A lot of questions that are asked may be referred to the FPPC since I'm not an attorney. But feel free to reach out to me with any questions you have during this presentation or afterwards at any time. The information presented in this, what I'm presenting is primarily from the FPPC, and it highlights selected provisions of the Political Reform Act. Please do not rely solely on this presentation for all the rules that are pertaining to your committee and your situation. Trainings and manuals are provided by the FPPC on their website. The website link is there. Local candidates and their treasurers should use Manual 2 to find all relevant information relating to campaign finance rules and regulations. What will we be learning today? How to get started with your campaign, campaign contributions and restrictions, finances and record keeping, how to complete and file campaign reports, and what to do when the election is completed. Now, I do want to mention, Anne, if there are anybody that is asking a question in the chat box, I cannot see the chat box right now. So
I'll
if you
ask
could
you.
speak up and we can answer those questions as they come in.
I will. Thank you.
As Anne was saying before, it is very important that each candidate staffs up with the appropriate staffing. Treasurers are one of the key positions in every campaign, besides the candidate. Both the candidate and the treasurer must take responsibility for their accounts. They must make appropriate steps to ensure compliance with all record and reporting rules. Stay informed and aware of the bank deposits and the proper expenditures of the campaign funds. Both the candidate and treasurer are equally liable in any audit or FPPC enforcement cases for non-disclosure on campaign reports or lack of records. And all campaign disclosure reports are signed under a penalty of perjury. Some of the forms that you will be having to fill out, like Martin was talking about earlier, the 501, you file this before soliciting contributions, and it's filed with your filing officer, whether that's the Registrar of Voters office, or if you're running for a city position, that's the city clerk's office. The Form 410 opens up your campaign committee and secures the FPPC number with the Secretary of State. A copy of the Form 410 must go to your filing officer. The Form 460 is used to disclose ongoing financial reports. The 497 is a form that is required to be filed anytime a contributor donates $1,000 or more within 24 hours. This is during the 90 days before the election. So beginning in August, any contribution that you receive of $1,000 or more must be reported on a Form 497 within 24 hours. The Form 700 is a statement of economic interest, and that is filed with the Registrar of Voters. If you are running for a city office, it'll be filed with the city clerk. And you'll probably need an employer identification number, an EIN, from the IRS in order to open up your bank account and other tax purposes. The Form 501 is filed before spending or receiving any money, and this includes the use of personal funds. So make sure that you file your Form 501 as soon as you get up and running. You must file a new 501 even if you are running for re-election. So let's say you win your election and you open up your re-election committee, you need to file a new 501 for each. And you will file this with the city clerk if you're running for a city office, and the Registrar of Voters office if you're running for any other office. For Section 2, the state candidate expenditure limit, that is only for state candidates, so skip Section 2 on the Form 501. The Form 410 is filed with the Secretary of State's office, and that is so you can receive your FPPC number. There is a new rule that is only a couple years old that they now allow for electronic signatures of the Form 410, and that can be emailed to digitalfiling@sos.ca.gov. The name requirements for your committee must include the candidate's last name, the office sought, and the year of the election. And you're going to submit an initial Form 410 And then you're going to submit an amendment to your Form 410 when the committee has qualified. And the committee has qualified, Martin had mentioned this as well, when you have raised or spent $2,000 or more. And that Form 410 amendment is due within 10 days of raising or spending $2,000 or more. Please be sure to completely fill out this Form 410 or it will be rejected by the Secretary of State's office. Some common reasons for rejections include incorrect committee names, if there are any missing addresses, and if you leave off the bank account information on page 2. Candidates who also serve as their own treasurer must sign the Form 410 twice. So there's a section, the first line of the Form 410 is for treasurers, and the second line is for candidates. So if you are your treasurer, your own treasurer, please sign the form twice. Upon qualifying as a committee, raising $2,000 or spending $2,000, please send the Secretary of State's office the annual $50 check. It is required upon qualifying as a committee, but also annually in January until the committee is terminated. So even after the election, if your committee remains open on January 15th of 2025, you must send another $50 check to the Secretary of State's office. Here's the Form 410. As you can see at the top left, you will click the box initial. If you have not yet qualified as a committee, you can leave that blank. But if you have qualified as a committee, put the date that you qualified. In section 1, you'll put the committee name and address, and mailing address if different, and phone number. The county of domicile will be the county that your committee is located in. So most of you will probably be in Santa Clara County or San Mateo County. And the jurisdiction where a committee is active is the agency that you are running for. So if it's San Mateo, it'll be City of San Mateo. If it is the County Board of Education, it'd be the County Board, Santa Clara County or San Mateo County, depending on what you're running. Section 2 includes the treasurer's information and the assistant treasurer's information, and any other principal officers. If this is like a ballot measure committee, you would put other principal officers in that section. Again, under section 3, please make sure if you're your own treasurer that you sign both twice. But the treasurer signs on the first line and the candidate signs on the second. Page 2 of the Form 410, you are going to make sure that you include your committee name on all pages of the Form 410 and the bank account information on section 2. You can see it right there where it says campaign bank account is located. And then for candidate controlled committees, you're going to fill out section 4, which is your name, the office you're running for, the year of the election, and whether you are running in a partisan election or a nonpartisan election. Most elected officials running for local elected office are nonpartisan offices. Your FPPC committee identification number. I'm sorry, Laura, do you have a question?
I didn't.
I do. This is not my first time running, and I live in the town of Colma, and I just want to make sure I don't do any of this. In the past, I've bought my own signs. I've used my own stamps for mailing, and I just want to make sure that that's okay. I don't raise money.
Are you spending less than $2,000?
Yes.
Then you'll be filling out a Form 470.
Okay. I just want to make sure it's okay that I don't, there's only approximately 400 people that vote in the town of Colma. We only have less than 1,700 residents.
Yeah, so if you are going to spend less than $2,000, you are not required to file campaign statements.
Okay.
However, once you raise $2,000 or spend $2,000, you will be required to file reports until the committee is terminated.
Okay, thank you.
So if you do not raise or spend $2,000 or more, you'll still have to fill out Form 470.
Okay, thank you.
FPPC committee identification number. So the Secretary of State's office will assign your committee an identification number upon receipt of your Form 410. The Secretary of State posts the identification numbers on their website, and you can see that website, sos.ca.gov. This number is supposed to be used on all FPPC reporting forms and all campaign materials. So an example of putting it on your campaign materials will be paid for by committee name and the FPPC number. What is a contribution? Well, a contribution can be money, whether that's cash, check, credit card, or wire transfers. It could be non-monetary items, so donated goods or services or discounts. It could be loans to the committee, whether that is personal loans to the committee, or if you go and get a bank loan, you would have to report that loan on your Form 460s. Candidates' personal funds, fundraiser tickets, you must disclose the full cost of the ticket, and local limits may apply. So as Martin was talking about, there are some local limits that are implemented by the city of San Mateo. Other local limits may apply. So please make sure that you are paying attention to the rules and regulations of your local agencies. When receiving electronic contributions, you can receive those by credit card, wire transfer, debit account transaction, text message, or any other similar electronic payment options. A lot of Democratic candidates use ActBlue or Nation Builder. So make sure that you use an online platform that is set up for campaigns. It makes life a lot easier for you when you do that. So I would steer away from PayPal. I would steer away from Stripe because they're not set up for campaign purposes. Restrictions on contributions. So there are no anonymous contributions of $100 or more. Never accept or spend $100 or more in cash. You can have a petty cash fund, but it has to be $100. You cannot accept $100 in cash from a donor, and you cannot give change to satisfy that requirement. So if someone gives you a $100 bill or even $100 in cash, change cannot be given to satisfy that requirement. So you can't give them $1 to satisfy the $99 requirement.
Jordan,
yeah.
One of the questions in the chat was answered by somebody else, but I want your opinion on how reasonable this would be. And the question was, can a candidate serve as their own treasurer? And so I want your views on that subject.
So a candidate is allowed to be their own treasurer. However, when you're campaigning, it'll be very difficult to do both jobs because it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work being a treasurer. And so, yes, you can be your own treasurer. I would recommend having someone else do it because it's a challenge. But please make sure that any treasurer that is going to be working on your campaign understands the rules and not only goes to these types of trainings, but also reads the manuals because it's really important to do so. Did I answer that, Anne?
Yes, you did. Absolutely. That's in my view, the correct answer.
Okay.
That makes a lot of sense. And there was another question that I don't believe was asked that, perhaps you can give a quick answer to this question. And it is, can you define or explain what a campaign committee entails?
Yeah, so a campaign committee is the official organization of your campaign. It's the entity that is if you look at it like a business, it's the business of your campaign. So it is a legal entity that is filed with the Secretary of State.
Right. Yeah, and then a follow-up perhaps to that was, do you have to create a committee?
You do not have to create a committee if you raise less than $2,000. However, if you raise $2,000 or more, you must create a committee and start filing campaign reports.
Right. And one last question that's also in the chat, and I can respond to some of this, but you may want to respond to some as well. And the question was, is it reasonable to consider miscellaneous expenses like providing food for campaign workers as justified? Clearly, since that is connected to the campaign itself, it is absolutely legal and appropriate to do so. Are there any concerns that you might have seen about with regard to this, Jordan? I think the question is, if it's the people who are working on your behalf, it is not problematic, but there might be other issues that you might want to address.
Yeah, so I would say that as long as these expenditures are related to your campaign, you are able to pay for them.
Right.
So I would say that food for volunteers is a very common expenditure. You want to be able to feed the people that are coming out to help you. I mean, that's especially when they're volunteering their time. So if it is reasonable, like Anne was saying earlier, if it's a reasonable campaign expense, for the most part, that is acceptable. However, please ask the FPPC, or you can ask me as well. And if I have questions about that, then I would say to reach out to the FPPC to get clarification. But if it's reasonably related to the campaign, you can spend money on it.
Yeah, and let me add something here, which is not exactly related, but it is related. There is a group in Southern California, Women Lead, that worked with women candidates, many of whom expressed that they had serious mental health issues because of how they were attacked when they were running for office by their opponents. And they recently, Women Lead, brought a request before the FPPC asking to assure that if it is related to the campaign, and those things are related to the campaign, if it causes mental health distress and people need to have assistance, the FPPC is going to agree and pass a bill saying that it is appropriate to have that spent with campaign funds.
Yeah. All right, so I do want to talk a little bit about campaign money laundering. Campaign money laundering occurs when the true source of a contribution is not reported. This is a serious violation of the law. A laundered contribution must be surrendered to the California State General Fund, and it's a very expensive violation of the Political Reform Act. An example of money laundering, campaign money laundering occurs when, let's say, I give Ann Ravel $100 for her campaign. However, I did not, that $100 came from somebody else. Let's say Bill James gave me that $100 to give to Ann Ravel. And I do not disclose that I got that money from Bill, then that would be considered a serious violation of the law. So make sure that all the campaign funds that you are receiving, that you are reporting the correct true source of the contribution. If that is a situation, if there is a situation where somebody, let's say Bill James gives me money to give to Ann, and I lump it into a lump sum to Ann, I would be considered an intermediary. And so me being an intermediary of that campaign donation has to be reported on the Form 460. So as long as the true source of the contribution is reported, then you're fine.
Right. And then there are a couple of other questions, and I know this is obviously up your alley. Can we have two treasurers, two to split the work between them? Is one of the questions.
Yeah, you can have a treasurer, and then you can have an assistant treasurer to help out. You're not required to have an assistant treasurer. You are required to have, by law, you're required to have a treasurer at all times.
Right.
But you can have an assistant treasurer helping you out.
And then one of the other questions is, can you provide examples of services, this is in quotes, that need to be reported as value? And how does it relate to volunteers who help out?
Yes, there is a slide that I will be talking about that issue.
Okay, good.
Now.
Okay, proceed.
All right.
Thank you.
So home and office events. A home or office event is not considered a contribution if the total cost of the event is $500 or less. This rule, it only pertains to the host of the event. The host, the owner of the home or the owner of the office. Food, beverages, and other items donated by someone other than the occupant counts towards the $500 threshold and is reportable as a non-monetary contribution. A host should hold no more than one fundraiser per day, or else the full amount of the fundraisers in that single day are aggregated, and it can be reportable if the event costs are $500 or more in aggregate. So if somebody hosts you a fundraiser and they spend less than $500 hosting that fundraiser, you are not required to report that as a contribution to your campaign. If it is above $500, yes, that is reportable and subject to any contribution limits that your city or county have put in place. What is not considered a contribution? Payments made by an organization, such as a union, association, political party, for certain communications that are sent only to the organization's members, employees, shareholders, or their families, are not considered contributions to a candidate endorsed in the campaign. When an organization hosts a debate or a meeting, as long as all candidates are invited, the organization has not made a reportable contribution, and the candidates have not received a reportable contribution. The same is true if this is a ballot measure committee. Volunteering personal services is not considered a contribution. So if an individual such as an envelope stuffer, precinct walker, or even an accountant donates his or her professional services to the campaign, no contribution has been made or received. If an employer donates employee services to a campaign and they spend more than 10% of his or her compensated time in a calendar month providing those services to the campaign, the employer has made a non-monetary contribution. Also, outside expenditures, as long as communications are not at the behest of or in coordination with the candidate or his or her committee. So this kind of goes along the question that Anne mentioned to me just a bit ago. Volunteering personal services is not reportable as a contribution.
Right.
Bank account rules. Each campaign is only allowed one bank account per election. Accounts may be opened as a personal account. However, most banks are going to require you to open up a business account. And if that is the case, you're going to need to visit the IRS website and apply for an EIN, an employer identification number. It's very easy, but if you need help, let me know and we can help assist. There are no commingling of funds allowed. Personal and other committees. So let's say you purchase something that is related to your campaign, but you use your personal funds to do it. That is not allowed. You're not allowed to deposit donations into your personal bank account. And if you're going to use personal funds on your campaign, those funds must be deposited in the campaign bank account before you use it. Candidates must make all campaign expenditures from the campaign bank account. There's only a small number of exceptions, but that is the exception of the candidate filing and ballot statement fees. You are allowed to pay for those out of pocket, but nothing else is allowed.
Mm-hmm.
Now we go on to the Form 460, the campaign financial statement. The Form 460 reports financial activity of the campaign, all contributions received and expenditures made. It is completed by the campaign treasurer. It can be filed electronically if available or via paper copy. You're going to need to check with your filing officer. Martin was talking about the city of San Mateo uses NetFile to file their software. So please check with your filing officer to make sure that you know how to file these financial reports. There are jurisdictions that do not have electronic options available, so they require a paper copy. If that's the case, you will have to submit that in accordance with the rules of your filing officer. If you do not get your Form 460 in on time, you are subject to a $10 a day late fine, but the FPPC will also hold other enforcement penalties. Forms are filed under penalty of perjury. some fast facts. This is a public document. It is reviewed by the filing officer to make sure that everything looks correct. And it can be amended. So if you are busy working on your Form 460 and it's 11:50 p.m. on the day that the report is due, and you're saying, oh my gosh, I am not done yet. I have a lot more of work to do. Please file the Form 460 on time. You can amend it, but please make sure that you get your filings in on time. And generally, postmark is the date file. So if you do have to send in a paper copy, make sure that you send it in by the date file.
Okay, Jordan, are you wrapping up? I think Bill James is asking us to wrap up soon.
Yeah, so what I can do is I can continue working with anybody that wants to stay or do another training another time, because there is a lot of information that is important here. So
Yeah, so that's a good idea, Jordan. I think what we should do now is let Anne and Martin join back, and if you stop your share for now, and let's have each of you make just a minute of closing remarks. Yeah, because some people might need to get back to work or grab their sandwich before work. I want to thank you all, and I'm going to let Anne resume the chair role. I want the candidates to know that all of this sounds really complicated, but it is doable, and we don't want you to be discouraged about being a candidate. It's all about figuring out the rules, working through them, getting a friend you trust maybe to do this role for you, or hiring somebody to do it, because you can do it. And we just want you to be aware of what the requirements are. As Jordan said, and Martin as well, and Ann, there are resources out there, and a lot of them are free. So depending on what your campaign is, you can do it. And I'll step back and let you all say a closing remark.
Yeah, thank you. Let me just agree with what you just said, Bill, and I appreciate it. And I know some of you may feel awkward about contacting the FPPC, and I think everybody's been pretty positive about it, although I will say sometimes they are very slow in responding. And if people are nervous, I'm happy to give anybody my email address and I can assist them in something for free. Trust me. So it's just ann.ravel, Ravel @gmail.com. Happy to interpret some of these things because the FPPC comes out with a lot of decisions that people don't know about, and there's some recent ones as well. So happy to help. What about you, Martin?
I would just say one of the common things that, from my experience working at the county elections office, I didn't touch on it earlier, but I do want to make sure that everyone's aware of the resources that are available through both the county elections website and the California Secretary of State's office has a lot of really helpful resources there. Ballot designations, the California Secretary of State's office have guidelines and worksheets for you to work through. The county elections office and your clerk's office will help you with that as well. But just to start thinking about what you may want to include as your ballot designation if you're considering running, there's very strict guidelines that are outlined on the Secretary of State's website about what can and cannot be included. So just be aware of those when you're going through the nomination period, that those are set forth by California California Secretary of State regulations. But yeah, definitely recommend taking a look at the county website, take a look at your local city website and the Secretary of State's office.
Thank you. And thank you all for attending and listening to a lot of this detail, which is really important for those of you running for the first time. And thank you, Bill, for organizing this. Appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, my pleasure. Whole committee organized it. I thank you to all the panelists. Folks might have to drop off, but Jordan, if you had a few more slides you wanted to go through, Martin and Anna, you can feel free to go back to your lives too. But if anybody wants to stick on, we'll go through these last slides. And as always, there's always more to learn, right?
Thank you. I do have to hop on.
Thank you, Anne.
Soon. Bye.
Thank you, Martin.
All right, so I'll continue.
Yeah, go for it, Mark. Go for it,
Okay.
Jordan, rather.
All right. This is the Form 460 cover page. So you will need to check for the filing schedule for the dates. I will post it in just a bit. But you'll put your campaign filing period at the top. You'll click the type of statement. So whether that's a semi-annual statement or a pre-election statement, you'll put it under the type of statement under section 2. And then the candidate and treasurer must both sign on the cover page. This is the filing schedule for candidates and their controlled committees for local office. You can see that the semi-annual is due July 31st, and this period will cover from January 1st to June 30th. You'll also have 2 pre-election statements, one due September 26th and one due October 24th, which will cover July 1st to September 21st, and then September 22nd to October 19th. And then after the campaign, you'll either submit a Form 460 to terminate the committee, or if your committee is open past December, there is a semi-annual requirement due January 31st of next year. Within 24 hours, starting on August 7th, this is when the 24-hour reporting period begins, and you'll use the Form 497. You'll file that form if a contribution of $1,000 or more in the aggregate is received from a single source. So let's say somebody gives you $500 for your campaign, and then they give you another $500 later on. You will need to report the total contribution of $1,000 within the 24-hour period. This schedule is on the FPPC website, but you can also Google it, FPPC schedules, and it'll come up on Google search.
Jordan, in the chat there, on the previous slide, in the chat, there was a question about that asterisk. I assume, and the person asked, does that mean contributions from when I started raising until June 30th? Is that what's covered there?
So it is, yeah, that is a really great question, Bill. If your campaign had already filed reports this year, you will file them from the date of the last report. So if you had a primary election, you'll file it from the previous campaign statements. However, if you are just now starting out, it will be January 1st. So if you have never filed a report, just know that it's always going to start January 1st of that year through the reporting period. So let's say you did not qualify as a committee, raised $2,000 or more until July. Your September 26th filing, it will not be July 1st to September 21st. It'll be January 1st through September 21st. Does that answer it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. On Schedule A of the Form 460, you'll disclose all your monetary contributions received. You'll list the date the committee obtained possession or control over the contribution. You'll itemize any contribution that is $100 or more in the calendar year. For individual donors, you must also report their occupation and employer. Occupation and employer can sometimes get confusing for some folks, but occupation is their job title and employer is the name of the business. So if, let's say, somebody is an independent contractor and they don't have a separate name for their business, for occupation, please describe the nature of their work. And under employer, put no separate business name or self-employed. For PACs, if let's say a PAC gives you money towards your campaign, please make sure to include that committee's FPPC or FEC number on your form. Federal campaigns are allowed to give to state and local campaigns. However, local campaigns and state campaigns cannot give to federal candidates. So just keep that in mind. Some correct donor information is retired, can be, if they're a consultant, please put their business name. This is really important because you can pretty much consult on literally anything out there. So just putting consultant self-employed does not give very much transparency to what that person does for a living. My take on donor information, the more information, the more transparency that you put onto your Form 460, the better. You want to provide as much information as possible than leaving information out. Just putting manager or next door neighbor or acronyms is not allowed. Also, street addresses are the only PO boxes are not allowed to be used for satisfying the address requirement. It has to be their street home address. Contributions of $100 or more must be returned within 60 days if you cannot get that individual's name, address, occupation, and employer information. If you do not know where the money is coming from or the donation is coming from, you're required to send that to the Secretary of State's office for a deposit in the general fund. So just make sure that you do a good job, including if you get smaller donations, that you get the information that is required. This is an example of Schedule A and some of the information that you would be putting on your Schedule A. Keep in mind that you will lump sum any contributions less than $100 on the Schedule A summary, section 2, where it says amount received this period on itemized monetary contributions of less than $100. So you will lump sum that those donations there. Any donation of $100 or more, you have to itemize. Like Linda Gutierrez, she donated a cumulative to date of $100, so she has to have her information provided. If one signer on the joint, if there is multiple individuals that are signers on the bank account, if you receive a check, the signer is the contributor. So for this example, Sally Morgan and James Morgan have a shared banking account, but Sally Morgan has signed it, so the donation is coming from Sally Morgan. Donors that make a donation from their business account and another from their personal account is aggregated coming from and acted as if it's coming from the same source. So you'll have to, for example, Beachwear for Days is owned by Maria Edgeworth. She donated $99 twice, but because Maria owns Beachwear for Days and has donated almost $200 to the campaign, you are required to report that as a contribution. Yeah, itemize it on your Form 460. On Schedule B of the Form 460 is where you will put any loans that you have received. Candidates' personal funds may be reported as a loan. The report the financial you will also report the financial institution as the lender if it has been loaned. It has loaned the committee money, or the committee has drawn off a line of credit. And each loan from the same person is reported as a separate loan. So let's say a candidate puts, $5,000 into their campaign and puts another $1,000 into their campaign later on. You'll need to list each loan separately, $5,000 and then $1,000. And you'll need to continue reporting that loan is outstanding until either you've forgiven that loan or you have paid yourself back. Report loans until paid. Schedule C, non-monetary contributions. Examples include food and beverages, rental space, polls, and discounts. You have to report any non-cash related donations to your campaign. And you can see the example here. Seaside TV gave TVs. California Surfers Pad gave postage. So you have to list the description of the goods or services that's being provided. Under Schedule E, campaign expenditures. All expenditures must have a political, legislative, or government purpose, as Anna was saying earlier. No personal use of campaign funds. Do not use your personal bank account to purchase campaign related items, and do not use your campaign funds to on personal items as well. Some allowable expenditures include election night celebration, payment for campaign advertisements, filing fees, legal advice, payments for gas while attending campaign events, payments to a slate mail organization are some examples. Some prohibited expenditures include post-election vacations, health club dues, payments to a spouse for fundraising efforts, or any family member. Cosmetics, personal living accommodations, or clothes are some examples. You might look at that list and say, oh, that is strange. Why would anybody use campaign funds on those items? But you'd be surprised people do. On Schedule E is campaign expenditures. You may establish a credit card account. You may establish a petty cash fund, but it has to be $100 or less. And cash expenditures over $100 are prohibited. If you do have an expenditure that's over $100, you can use a debit card, credit card, or a check, but you cannot use cash. Candidates must deposit funds in their campaign bank account before making expenditures. If you mistakenly use personal funds rather than campaign funds, you do have to report that on your Form 460. If you do not want to be reimbursed, you report the amount on Schedule C as a non-monetary contribution and itemize each expenditure of $100 or more. Candidates who wish to be reimbursed will report it on Schedule E and itemize expenditures of $100 or more. And candidates who will be reimbursed by the committee in the future will report the payment on Schedule F and itemize expenditures of $100 or more. So you'll see that you put the date, number. Okay, so an expenditure of $100 or more for a gift, meal, or travel must include information in the description of payment. So like Hannah's Kitchen, you have to put the date, the number of attendees that attended for lunch, whether the candidate and any other individual with authority to make expenditures attended, and what the purpose of that lunch was. So it could be, taking your volunteer team out to lunch. You just have to write how many people attended the lunch and what the meeting was about. If you do have a credit card and you pay for campaign expenses with a credit card, you have to zero out the balance before using it if it's an existing credit card. Let's say you are allowed to use an existing credit card, but in order to use it for your campaign, you must have a zero balance outstanding on that credit card. And then once you designate it as a campaign credit card, you cannot use it for personal expenses. So you have to maintain that credit card for the campaign. You can go back and start using it for personal reasons after the campaign is over, but make sure that you do not use your personal credit card with on campaign funds. You must report sub-vendors of campaign agents and consultants, and also sub-vendors of credit card payments. So going back to this previous slide, the second example on the bottom, County Bank Visa, you made the payment to County Bank Visa to pay off the card. You have to disclose what you paid, what those payments were for. So if you used your credit card to pay for Phone Banks R Us, you have to list Phone Banks R Us as a sub-vendor of your credit card. And that's the same with if anybody on the campaign or a consultant pays for things, you can be reimbursed within 45 days, but each has to be listed on Schedule E under sub-vendors. This is an example of listing. On Schedule F, accrued expenses, you report goods and services received but not yet paid during the reporting period. Continue to report as accrued expenses until paid. So let's say that you got a bill in the mail or email and you're not able to pay for it right away. You still have to list it on your Form 460 of accrued expenses until you have paid that amount. Schedule I is miscellaneous increases to cash. Examples of increases to cash include interest received or credited to a checking or savings account or other type of deposit, refunds, sale of donated items, receipts from the sale of committee assets. If there are any funds that are credited to your bank account that was not a donation by individuals, you'll put it under miscellaneous increases to cash. Afterwards, you will, at the very end, you will take the summary page. Unless you have an electronic filing, which they'll set you up with NetFile or eCampaign, that will do this all for you. If you have to report this by paper copy, do the summary page last. You will put the numbers in accordance with each schedule. So for example, contributions received, item 1 is monetary contributions. You will get that information from Schedule A, line 3. So just make sure that you go through this and then fill it out completely. Local candidates do not have to fill out the sections that are listed as NA on the right. I am not able to see. Let me just look at questions real quick.
Yeah, Jordan, you can feel free to answer them now if you'd like, or you can just finish with your slides and then you can stop the share. The few of us who are still here, if you want to go through the questions at the end. Looks like you're almost to the end.
I'll wait. Yeah, I'm almost there. We've talked about this a little bit before, but reporting on Form 497, file Form 497 if you receive $1,000 or more from a single source. You may be able to file it by email, fax, personal delivery, guaranteed overnight mail, or online. depending on your local jurisdiction. Please ask your local filing office, whether that's the city clerk's office if you're running for a city office, or the county registrar of voters office if you're running for anything else, just to make sure that you are filing it correctly. Major donor notification. This is really important. If you receive $5,000 or more from a donor, you must notify them that they may qualify as a major donor. The donor may need to file those reports as listed on the slide. And I do have some sample major donor notice language if anybody is needing that information. I have a template that I use anytime a donor gets $5,000 or more. A donor will have to report on a major donor statement if they have donated a total of $10,000 in a calendar year to any campaigns, not just one campaign, but collectively. If you've spent $10,000 on political campaigns. If you make $1,000 or more in expenses on behalf of your own committee, no additional 24-hour report is required. You'll just disclose those expenses on the next Form 460. However, if your committee contributes to another campaign, you may be required to file a Form 497 contribution made report within 24 hours. Here is some rules on political advertising disclaimers. You can Google search FPPC campaign disclosure, a Google search, and it'll bring you to the same page. But basically, candidates and committees are required to disclose certain information on all materials that the campaign produces. And so usually it's paid for by and the committee name with the FPPC number. But please check with the FPPC on specific communication requirements. I'm just going to go after the election. All future filing obligations depend on the outcome of the election. Successful candidates can maintain an open campaign committee, but they must file regular reports until they terminate the committee. Defeated candidates may terminate their campaign committee, but after 90 days after defeated candidates' elections, those funds become surplus. And so the California Political Reform Act greatly reduces the ability for candidates to use those funds after 90 days. Things to remember. This is my last slide, Bill.
We're there.
File appropriate campaign reports on time. If you have to amend them later on, please at least file the initial campaign reports on time. Download the applicable filing schedules. You can find it by Google searching FPPC campaign schedules, and it'll show up. Keep good records, copies of all receipts and contributions for at least 4 years. That's really important. After 4 years, you can dispense with them, but please make sure that you keep all receipts and contributions and all campaign records for at least 4 years. And remember to document the information of donors who contribute $25 or more and never pay out of pocket for expenses. Always use the FPPC and any of today's panelists as a resource. And you can find more information on fppc.ca.gov. And I will definitely allow for the presentation to be shared.
Great. Thank you, Jordan. We'll make sure we share that with everybody. And so for the folks who were able to hang on and remain, I've got a hard stop in 10 minutes or 9 minutes, but there are some questions in the chat. Can you see them now? And did you want to kind of go through them?
Yeah, let's go through them. There's a lot in here, so
You can start from the bottom and go up, because I think you've started answering some of them.
Yes, the $1,000 threshold is cumulative. And it's over the time period of the election. So it's not just for the calendar year, but for the campaign as a whole. So yeah, um, within 90 days before the election, um, if any contribution gets to the limit of $1,000, you'll have to file that form, regardless of when somebody reported it before or donated previously. Did that answer that question, Josh? Is he still on? Oh yeah.
May still be
Okay.
on, but yeah.
Awesome.
Jeff had a question about the Form 460. You don't collect the occupation and employer when you get the donation. I guess there's two versions of it. Is it okay to then later get the information like occupation and employer so that you can submit it in the 460? Or what happens if at the time the next 460 is due, you don't yet have that information?
So if that's the case, file the report without the information, but you'll need to get that information as soon as possible.
What do you then do, Jordan? Do you amend the report when you have it?
You'll file an amendment to the Form 460, which will include that information. But a good method of handling this is to try to get that information when you get the donation.
Another question, Phoebe asked, if I have thank you cards, a pile of thank you cards in a box in my closet, and I use them for my campaign, can I use them for my campaign? If I do I have to report that?
Yes, you can use them as for your campaign, and if you're able um, to get the fair market value of those items, you will list them as a non-monetary contribution to your campaign.
Great. Okay, good. Well, I don't see others unless somebody has one. We can finish an hour and a half late and 5 minutes early. Jordan, thank you, Jet, for your generous time and for the great and comprehensive presentation and for sharing your slides. I think people have appreciated it and learned. It's always good. I like to hear this over and over again, just to have this information in mind to help advise candidates. And so it's super helpful.
Don't you handle the finances for the county party?
I do manage that, but we use professional accountants to make sure we make our filings correctly because, as you know, county party stuff is even more complicated.
It is very complicated
Yeah.
stuff, and I would say and I see you, Sandy. It's good to see you. Sandy has done treasure work for other entities before, but
Good.
it is really, really important to get a good treasurer. If they are not professionals, because they are expensive, make sure that your treasurer is willing and able to learn to do their job. It's really important. I do see a lot of simple mistakes that um, you know uh, campaigns will not get a good treasurer, or they'll get an absentee treasurer, and they don't do a good job with record keeping and whatnot.
So it has to be
Oftentimes,
somebody who knows what they're doing or is willing to learn it, and that you can
yeah,
trust to really do it.
and you can trust
Yeah.
because yeah, because you're liable for the work that you're
Yeah, and
doing.
it's an important thing. Earlier, I wanted candidates to feel that they can do this and they can even do it on their own if they need to. But you mentioned earlier reference to the fines. It's kind of like the IRS, if anybody's ever gotten into that world. The decision makers, they're trying to do a good job, but the fines can kind of be arbitrary and can be a lot. And it can be hard to get out from them once they've been assessed. So it's definitely worth it to pay attention and get this stuff done as correctly as you can. Very good. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for your time. Thanks again, Jordan. I appreciate your doing it. And for candidates, we'll see you in the next session next week.
And really, please reach out to me if you have any questions, because this is really a challenging, to do. And so, if you have any questions, please come and use me as a resource.
Yeah, we shared your email, Jordan, a couple times in the chat, so I think folks have that. Very good.
Okay.
Wonderful. Great. Thanks, everybody. Have a
Thank you
good
so
day.
much, Bill. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Bye.